Good?
Just yawning.
Welcome back to the KRUSES. This is the show that absolutely nobody asked for. With that yawn, I am exhausted as well. I think this is the most exhausted I've ever been before filming a podcast, or recording a podcast. But let's make it happen.
Yeah.
We've had an eventful 2-3 weeks over the last...
We've had an eventful, month and a half, 2 months.
I think the biggest challenge was...
Well, first of all, we haven't even talked about that we had another baby.
Yeah, it's true.
We could briefly touch on that whole experience.
Okay.
I had an appointment the day I went into labor, just a normal checkup. And as soon as I got home from that appointment, I think on the way home from that appointment, I started having some light contractions. Kept getting worse. And that night, we went to the hospital and we were good to go. They admitted us. I think we got there at maybe between 6 and 7. And I had Zion by 12:20 a.m.
Yeah. And we went in a bit quicker than with Harlow because I think Kara was suffering quite a bit with the labor pains prior to going to the hospital with Harlow.
I mean, I was managing them well, but I feel like it was better than with Harlow.
Well, I just remember we got there and the nurses were kind of dismissive. Like, oh, yeah, well...
with Harlow, but not this time.
No. Because we were pros and we knew.
Yeah.
We knew how things were working.
They even said, we left our bags in the car, and they're like, oh, you guys already know.
Yeah, they've done that line before, too, with all the people.
But anyway. Yeah.
And relatively a smooth delivery.
Yeah, not really that eventful.
I could have used more meal tickets. That is one thing that they never really take care of is the fathers with eating, but I guess that's
You get one free meal. And then you are free to get yourself some food. You just choose not to.
That's a good point. But I just see you getting all this treatment.
Yeah, they treat me well. But yeah, had him Thursday just after midnight, and I think we were home Saturday.
And we were trying for a 3:23:23 baby. We got it.
Yep.
It was like 11:50 at night, and
when they were going to have me start pushing.
Right.
Yeah.
And I made a joke, 3:23:23 be pretty cool. They're like, oh, yeah. So I'm like,
and then what did they call it? Which I didn't get it at the time.
Oh, it's the same front and back if you say it.
I don't remember what that's called.
I do. I don't want to say it right now. But yeah, I remember.
Okay. But yeah, that was basically our birth experience. Nothing too crazy. And then our lovely 2.5-year-old is a pandemic baby, and she's just been getting sick a lot lately. I feel like she has a new illness or cold every 2 to 3 weeks.
In the first 2 years of her life, she rarely ever got sick. I don't think she ever did.
No. But we also rarely went places because nothing was open out here. Mm-hmm. But yeah, when Zion was 3 weeks, he started getting sick. And I thought initially it was just a little cold like Harlow had. Because Harlow had the runny nose and she had a little cough. But that was about it. Otherwise, she was acting pretty normal. And I was like, okay, this stinks, but Zion's already getting a cold. And I guess a couple days later, we decided this doesn't seem normal.
Yeah, and I still wasn't that worried about it. I was like, yeah, get him checked out and see what needs to be done.
We were just very naive to how much he was struggling.
Right.
Which makes me sad to admit that, but we were. But now we know.
Yeah.
So I took him in to see his pediatrician, and right away she was like, yeah, I'm not comfortable with the way he's breathing. And she wanted me to take him to the ER. I started panicking because I'm like, Mike was working at Skechers. I don't know.
It was the busiest season for me right now with modeling work.
So he wasn't home. KK was at work. And I had Harlow. in Zion, and I'm like, I'm not about to take Harlow to the ER with me. And the doctor was even kind of like, why don't you go home and figure out some plans for her? And I was like, okay, like trying not to cry. I called Mike on the way home, like bawling, and he was like...
I'm like, well, first you tried to call me, and I couldn't answer because I was in the middle of a meeting.
Yeah.
Step out of the meeting, and then I'm like, I'm going to call you back, just get the gist of what's happening, because I know you took Zion to get a checkup. And I say hello, and you were just like silent, and then you start crying. I'm like... Whoa, what happened? What's going on? Everything good? And you're like, I have to take him to the ER. I'm like, okay, not great, but not as bad as I was.
I can laugh now, but I was like, that's the most scared I think I've ever been having like a child. Just like, I've never felt that type of scared with one of our children.
Mm-hmm. Well, even at the point, I still wasn't that, to be honest, I wasn't that panicked. I was just like, I've never had to be in a situation where I'm working and then all of a sudden I have to like just dip. It just felt weird to have to leave like in the middle of something that seemingly was important. But
yeah, because I should also say that where she wanted me to take him was at that time of day, like an hour away in traffic. So luckily it was closer to where Mike was working at. But yeah, had to drive him down there. Went to the ER, and
as we were pulling up to the ER, as I'm walking in, there's a crazy man that apparently just left the ER or the hospital, and he had all of his, I don't know,
shirt half on
and all of his connections with whatever medical things are attached to him, and he's freaking out, and security's trying to kick him out, and it was a rowdy bunch.
It's a rowdy place. But yeah, they just kind of like checked us in, and the ER doctor that was there didn't really do a lot. He kind of just like looked at him, and then we eventually found out that he was waiting on a pediatrician to come down and kind of like evaluate him.
And yeah, and like every like 20, 30 minutes, that's when like I started to get more and more like, oh crap, this just seemed way more serious. And
yeah, we should also mention they didn't have any rooms, but they were nice enough considering we had a very newborn child. They just kind of like put us in a closet. It had like chairs in there, but
I know. And you often think like, oh, it's a UCLA hospital. It's going to be very nice and well ran. And I just think it's so saturated right now with people.
I think that's just also the nature of ERs.
Yeah, I know. I haven't had that many experiences.
Yeah.
So yeah, we sat there, and then we were seeing like a lot of doctors, but they happened to be younger, like residence doctors, whatever they're called.
Yeah.
And they were great at what they do, but it just, the way that they communicated with us was like very unsettling. And I was like,
we didn't really know what to think.
Yeah. We weren't getting much insight. And one of the doctors would check him out, and then they're like, okay, I think we need to admit him. And then the one doctor was like, so I'm going to ask you something that's very strange. And we're like, okay. And I'm thinking he's going to be like, do you guys smoke in the house, or you guys, whatever. I'm like, I'm like prepared for these questions that are important, but probably uncomfortable for some people. And then he's like, what were your expectations with your son here today? And I'm like, I don't know. I'm like, get him looked at to get feeling normal.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe it's a normal question. It just threw me. I was like,
it threw me too. I was like, to get him better.
Yeah. I think you said to like make sure he's not suffering or something. Yeah. And he's like, okay. And then he's like, and then asked a series of other questions, and it just was like, what is going on? And
then he was like, well, I'm going to go talk to, I think, the doctor that oversees him. I don't know these medical.
We are not that smart.
Yeah. No. And we were sitting there just like felt like forever. I think we got to the ER at like 12:30, just like afternoon. And by the time they admitted us and got us up to a room, it had to have been 6:30, 7 at night.
Yeah. Yeah, it was late.
And by the time we got up there, then it was just like a steady stream of people coming in, like checking them out. And we're like, we had no idea what this whole process entailed and like what was going on or what to expect. And it just kind of kept snowballing very quickly. And like Zion just really took a turn and like started going downhill quickly. I think they started him on oxygen right away. And we tried to fall asleep for a little bit, and I feel like I was maybe asleep for like a half hour. And all of a sudden I wake up and there's like 4 doctors just standing around me. And that was very unsettling to wake up to. And they just were basically like, he's not doing well. Mm-hmm. They had to bump him up to, I think, like 9 on the oxygen of, I think it was like 9 liters that they had to bump him up to or something. And I just started panicking. And that's when they like started mentioning the PICU. And yeah, so we were only there at that hospital for that evening. And then they had us transferring to a different hospital to the PICU. I think we arrived at that hospital at like 6:30 in the morning.
And up to that point, I think now that I think about it, as much as all that was uncomfortable and stuff, what was the worst was, I think, them in the ER first trying to put an IV in.
Oh, yes.
I mean, that was a very difficult job to do, but they failed like 3 times trying to do it. And it's like basically like torturing a little infant, just trying to, obviously it needs to be done, but
we can't talk about it too much because I'm going to start crying.
I know. But that was like really hard. It was like, I'm holding him down. They're trying to put a needle in him. It's not working. He's screaming. He doesn't know what's going on. He's only 2 weeks old. I'm like, we can't, there's nothing that you can really do to comfort him. It's just like, you got to just suffer through it.
I just stood there and bawled. I had never seen my baby be so red from crying and like hot and sweaty. And I was like, ugh.
Yeah, he was miserable for a while. And they tried and they did their best and they couldn't do it.
Yeah.
So then like, okay, we'll try when we get upstairs to into your room that you're going to be admitted at. And they tried again and no luck.
They tried twice up there. Couldn't do it. And then they finally came in another time and they're like, okay, we have someone who's really good at IVs. And thankfully he got it on the first try. And I was like, never want to go through that in my life again.
So that was brutal. The other brutal thing for me was when they were doing like the deep nasal suction. Yeah. I don't remember what stage they started doing that to him, but it's like sticking a long rubber catheter down his nose to some part of his throat. And of course, an adult loses their mind too if that happens.
Yeah.
He has no idea what's going on, and they're putting saline and suctioning, and it's just like...
I asked one of the respiratory therapists, I'm like, basically like, I knew it didn't feel great, but I was like, is it just uncomfortable or like what? And he's like, it's really not a great experience. Mm-hmm. So then that just made it even worse to know that, it was just wasn't fun for him.
It was very like savage like in the procedure, but I get that's what needed to be done.
Yeah. No, they were all doing their jobs. But so then we got transferred to the PICU the next morning. We were in there for a day and a half.
Yeah.
And by the end of that day and a half, the doctor there was kind of like making it sound like, oh, we're going to start like weaning him off.
Yeah. He seemed very like chill, like this is kind of not necessary. And
and they were going to transfer us just to like the main pediatric floor. And we're like, okay, like things are starting to look good. And
he would even speak over people. He's like, yeah. He's like, no, I think we're going to wean him down today. He'll be off of it overnight. We're going to observe him and then likely just discharge tomorrow around noon.
Yeah. And then right when we got out of the PICU to the main pediatric floor, he basically kind of like took a turn again. And they're like, we got to bump his oxygen back up. And then we were in that room for a little over a week.
He was just very slow progress. And every once in a while he'd make progress. They would adjust the oxygen and try to decrease things so that he can start breathing normally on his own. And then he would just kind of overreact again and struggle. And
come to find out, the pace that they were going with him of trying to get him off oxygen, I think is a pretty normal pace that they go at. But they kind of discovered that because he was so young, they just had to go a lot slower. Mm-hmm. They basically just kept telling us, like, we just have to go at his pace. The other most terrible thing that I think I had to go through, I say I, but really it was Zion. When we were in the PICU, they wouldn't let me feed him. Mm-hmm. He was not even bottles. So he was just on IV fluids, and I could just tell he was hungry, and like, he just wanted me to feed him. That was hard.
I just wanted them to feed me too, and they wouldn't. So imagine how I felt. So
yeah, that was the other crappy part. that you couldn't like comfort him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I had a lot of coming to God moments over that like week. In a weird way, I had been so busy leading up to that hospital visit. So like the first 2 weeks of his life, I was just working so much that, you know, you were doing most of the work and I rarely got to hold him. I'd come home and be able to hold him at night and
for like an hour.
For like an hour or two. Yeah. And I think that's something that I just take for granted, like how fortunate we were with Harlow that I was able to spend. I literally was home all the time, like every hour with her for so much of her early stages of life. And now I've just been having to work so much. And that was kind of, you know, it made sense because we needed it and it was a job and whatnot. But then being forced in this hospital and like being able to connect with him all of a sudden, and then all of a sudden being worried that, I mean, I was worried that we might lose him. And I was like, what does this future look like? And I've lost loved ones, but I've been so blessed to not have lost like an immediate family member or have suffered in that way. Mm-hmm. And this was the first time where I was like, this might be a reality. And I really had to like humble myself in many ways. And I think also it was therapeutic in a strange way, like being in the hospital with just you and Zion, obviously medical professionals coming in and out. But a lot of the time we were just like so present and so focused on him, mm-hmm. and like the outside world, everything else was like so insignificant. Because in many ways, those things are trivial to like what we have as a family.
Yeah.
And so I was like so disconnected from social media and being on my phone and communicating with other people. Like I was just so in the moment of trying to like serve Zion and
we lived for when the doctors would come in. Or like
yeah. In a sense. Yeah. And so like I almost felt recharged. Like it was like the most, I think I text some people this, but I was like, when they were asking me how things are going, but it was like the most heartbreaking I've ever felt, the most heartbroken I've ever felt. But then also like my heart expanded in many ways, like over mm-hmm. the course of like 4 or 5 days, because things got reprioritized. I was able to like hold my son, like be present and, kind of get rid of all the other distractions of life. And
I think my mom and I had kind of mentioned that in a conversation I had with her, that, you know, you mentioned that you weren't really here. You went back to work right away, right after we brought him home from the hospital. And then she's like, in a way, this is kind of like a time that Mike is getting to bond with him.
Yeah,
because
it was.
I'm so used to at like the newborn age and like their whole first year being like their comfort, because like I'm the one that feeds him and I'm just with him more throughout the day because Mike's working. And so it was weird in the hospital. It was so hard for me to comfort him at times, or that I just like mm-hmm. couldn't comfort him because my way of doing that is feeding him and they wouldn't let me for good reason. And that it was kind of strange that Mike kind of took over that like taking care of him role that I'm so used to doing. Yeah. So, I mean, it was kind of cool that you got that experience with him.
Yeah. And it made me like, I was taking like his little life for granted. Like when he was born, I'm just like, we're so blessed with Harlow and life in general that I'm just, you know, I don't just appreciate how fragile life is in general. Mm-hmm.
I think what else was kind of humbling was like, sorry, I'm trying
bulldoze through.
Trying to take over for you. It was like so heartbreaking, the thing that we were going through ourselves with him, but to sit in our room and then hear like, why are we talking about this? To hear like another kid in their room.
Right.
That was hard too.
Right. Or just, yeah.
Because, like, you just don't realize, like, kind of like you said, like...
yeah, all things considered.
When your kids are healthy and you have them home, like, you don't think about the kids and families that are going through, like, mm-hmm. these situations all the time at the hospital. And, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I think, like, we've grown in so many ways in that aspect. And just, like, God bless everyone else that has suffered in so many so many ways and so much worse than we probably have. And also, again, like I think even more now, I was so overwhelmed with emotion after first having Harlow delivered, and those like medical professionals and the nurses, like how incredible they are, where they're in our lives for like sometimes, you know, one shift of their life, and like they impacted us so much, and they like sacrificed so much for the sake of a stranger.
Yeah.
And then the same thing, like they kept our son alive and healed him. And
but we kind of like, it's almost like we like formed a family at the hospital.
Yeah,
like,
yeah. Like,
these people became such a part of our life for like those 10 days.
Right.
That
in a bit
we saw every day, and, you know, that were, I don't know.
Yeah, we'd see the same ones, and it just, they're so like special. They're so such wonderful people. And
yeah,
I'm a UCLA Bruins fan now. Like I'm already like trying to find merch I'm gonna start rocking. And they were so many incredible people.
Yeah. But thankfully, he came out of it.
He finally like turned a corner, which is everyone was saying.
Yeah, and once he did, it was like quick. Although we did have a very minor setback our last day there. They thought maybe he was taking a tiny step backwards, but he was good.
And then it was also like we wanted him to get proper care and like treatment and make sure that he was like ready to leave the hospital.
Yes.
But I was getting to the point where I'm like, we can swing it at home. Like, let's just, I'm like, yo, they're coming in like 4 minutes, Zion. Like, get your lungs together. Start breathing slow. I'm counting respirations. We're like, 1, 2. That's too fast, buddy.
We'd give him a little pep talk the last couple of days. Every time we knew the doctors were coming in, like, okay, keep him calm. Yeah. We need him to see relax. Him when he's like not screaming.
How's his diapers? Okay, he's a little wet. Let's change him quickly.
Like, okay, Zion, you got this. Put on your
So then they're like,
best show.
They're checking like his retractions and seeing how he's breathing. And I'm trying to like turn him away from the light a little bit to get the shadows like, you know, dimmed down. I'm like, he's fine. He's actually been really good the last couple hours.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. On top of that, the other hard thing was just having to be away from Harlow. We've never like experienced that, although we got to see her throughout our time there. But it was just hard. Thankfully, my mom was here. She came out to take care of her, which put us at ease.
Incredible help.
Yes. But that was hard too.
That was your call. You're like, I think we need to have my mom fly out here. I'm like, no, that's not necessary. Like, I know she would, and she's incredible help, but we'll swing it without her. Don't worry about it. That was
our first night when we took him to the ER. Mike's like, I'll just go back and forth. Well, because I think we both thought like, okay, this is going to be like a day or two, and we'll be good.
And that first doctor said, I'm thinking maybe 2-3 days. I'd be so surprised if you stayed here for a week. Like, she's like, that rarely happens. And I'm like, okay, we're good. I'm already trying to schedule work again, get me back on the books. And
again, I think it's just how young he was at the time that he got it. But some good things that we could talk about. Our view was cool from our last room.
Yeah, I recommend that hospital. It was comfortable, and
we got to see the UCLA football practice field. Kind of watched them play practice.
Watched them play practice.
Or watched them do practice.
Right outside the ER entrance for people pulling up.
Yeah. Not that is like a good thing, but
it's entertaining.
We were across the street from some frat houses. Saw some frat boys tanning on their roof.
Or playing music or whatever sins they're committing.
What else did we do? Oh, breakfast was freaking money every morning. I'd go down and get breakfast.
That was really money for you. It was okay. I mean, I don't really eat breakfast, but it was
I looked forward to that every day I woke up.
What I did look forward to is the El Pollo Loco chicken avocado burrito.
Yes.
For like $6.
Yeah. Well, free with because we got one meal ticket a day. And so you got to use that.
They did something right there. And since you breastfed, you also got
a free meal. So really we got 2 free meals a day.
We made that work.
Harlow got to come visit us. She wasn't allowed up in Zion's room, but she got to come visit. And my mom would come up to the room with me, and then Mike and Harlow would go on adventures. And you guys saw some fun stuff.
Oh yeah, I would just take her to the UCLA campus, and we'd just walk around. And we'd go to like the sports facilities, and we'd watch them play tennis practice, or they were in some matches, and we could just go right up to the front. There was like hardly anybody there, and Harlow would just roam. Yeah. One time during a match, she threw a ball on the court. It wasn't my kid. I just kind of ignored it.
I don't think she intentionally did it. Didn't you say it kind of like rolled away from her and then bounced onto the court?
I had given her the spiel that she, I asked her to please not throw anything on the court. And we were literally in the front row on the side. Like we were the only ones in the front row and they're in the middle of a match. And I'm like, you can stay here. Just maybe try to keep your voice down. And if you want to pick up any of these tennis balls, there was a bunch of stuff laying around on the bleachers. I'm like, you can roll them like to the left or the right. Absolutely cannot throw them on the court. And she's like, okay. Mm-hmm. And so then I look over and I see her like getting ready to throw it to the side. I'm like, oh, and she chucked it and it rolled to the side. And then all of a sudden it rolled underneath the bleachers and just onto the court. I'm like, it worked out. Someone saw it.
Yeah. But, it also, I thought it was funny because like, so in our room, there was like, we were trying to keep it just dark all the time so that he could just like rest. And then at night, there was like, we would pull the curtain in between where his bed was and where we were sleeping. And there was no light on our side of the curtain. So we were just like sitting in the dark over there. And we'd turn on like our phone flashlight or something. And then that was about the time that I'd be eating supper or you would. And I don't know, it cracked me up when you're like, we're kind of just having like little date nights every night.
Yeah, that's also something I wrote down. I kind of like journaled during the time. And I wrote like, yeah, we had never like, when's the last time that you and I like sat down and like just had a meal together, like just us two
for like a week straight. Really.
Like, yeah, like we literally did. And like we weren't on anything and we were just talking. And yeah, that was also something that I think was a silver lining in it.
Yeah.
And also I think the nights were almost as like complex as it was to like keep Zion's weak little lungs working right. Like we had it like a really pretty good system. It was like very systematic and everything was like operating smoothly. I even make my own charts for the nurses. I was like,
oh yeah, the nurses were impressed with you.
I had my own spreadsheets. Lorraine,
you were weighing the diapers for them.
I was doing it all. I'm like, we're gonna keep this thing efficient. Let's get this boy out of here. You know what I mean? So like we had a system. Like he'd cry, I'd wake up. I know how to change him. I know how to swaddle him quickly, put him right where he needs to go. We figured out how to like change his like pulsometer and make it fit right so it gets a good reading. And
because that was something that drove us nuts. Oh, we forgot to mention one day I thought it was starting to get warm in our room.
Oh yeah.
And I was like, does anybody else feel warm? And they're like, yeah, maybe a little, but like it's fine. Then I left for
I know why it's warm. What was that nurse's name? She broke the AC.
No, it was already getting warm before that.
But she admitted that she broke it.
Yes. Well, then I went home because Harlow and Mom were there that day. So I took them back home. And then when I came back, I walked in the room. I was like, Mike, it is freaking hot in here. I'm like, what is happening?
I was like, yeah, it's a little
You're like,
warm.
Yeah, they just put in a ticket to have our AC checked. Well, I think Zion was starting to get really irritable from it too, because then he got super like cranky, was crying. It was hard to settle him down. His monitor just kept going off because he was crying. So then his heart rate was elevated and it was just beeping at us for like probably a good hour. I was sweating. I told Mike, I'm like, I think I'm standing in puddles. Like I have puddles in my shoes.
Yeah, that was gross. You did. Nasty.
It was so hot in there. And then finally the people came that were going to look at it and he's like, aiming his thing up at the ceiling to try and get a temperature read. He's like, yep, it says 99. I was like, it says 99?
Granted, it was at the ceiling.
I know, but it was hot in there.
It was cooking. It was good.
That was the only time I saw Mike get a little irritable himself.
That was the first time I was like, I want to punch. I want to put a hole through that monitor right now. I was so angry. Yeah. That was the first time that actually got the best of me.
Yeah. But thankfully they got it fixed. And it started to cool off in there. But anyway, yeah. That was our unfortunate event that we tried to find the bright side in. And unfortunately, now Zion has another little cold again. And I've been like on edge. Because I don't ever want to go back and experience that again. But I think it's just a little cold at this point. And we're going to keep him in a bubble for a while.
So, because Harlow was one, did you say that Harlow was one that had the sickness that got him?
Yeah, she was sick before he got sick. And I'm almost 100% sure that she had RSV, but she just fought it on her own.
And we could have done better, and we're obviously going to be more cautious, but like, we did ground her for getting him sick because that was mostly her fault. So she lost all iPad privileges.
You made a joke like that to one of the nurses.
I made a few jokes and they didn't know I was joking. And
yeah,
it was like,
and that's why I was like, I felt so awkward. Because I'm like, Mike, they do not get your sense of humor.
Well, there was times where like, I'm like, this is serious. Yes, but like, we can all be a little lighthearted.
Well, for sure. You were good at keeping it light sometimes.
And it depended on the nurse too. Because like I'd try to throw in a zinger and every once in a while they'd respond and like give me something back where they would be like,
yeah.
I'd be like, I also have the mask. So like, we don't even know each other that well. It's hard to like make assumptions and judgments because we just see eyeballs. And I'm looking at eyeballs and shoes. I'm like, what kind of, Hoka's. Okay. What kind of person are we working with? Oh, he's wearing Chucks. What does that mean if he's wearing Chucks here? You know what I mean though? Did you not do that?
No.
You have to. I'm always like looking at, I'm like, what's the name tag? I'm like, oh, resident. How long you been here? Because you could just tell the way of like, I mean, I'm not a professional, obviously, but I like to make judgments on like how competent they are and
by the shoes they wear.
It does say something.
Okay.
I mean, that says a lot about who you are. And
you like the nurse that had Skechers on?
Of course, and I told her too. She ignored me, and then she's like, "Oh, you're talking to me?" I'm like, "Yeah, Skechers." She was the best. Oh. Who was your favorite?
Oh gosh, I don't even remember their names now.
I think for whatever reason, Lorraine seemed the sharpest to me. She had she was so systematic, and
she was one of our night nurses. She said she'd been there a long time, and she had kids of her own.
She just would come in there and like rearrange the room to make it work efficiently, and always would ask if we needed anything, and always had like a strong opinion about what needed to be done to like make him comfortable and blah blah blah. Thankfully,
I would say all but maybe one, maybe two of our nurses were pretty great.
What was that one that we're
not going to name names.
No, what was her name? I'm curious. I can't remember.
I'll tell you after. Not that she was like, she might be a great nurse, but she maybe came in our room once the whole day. Yeah. And just wasn't super attentive to Zion.
And some of them just weren't very nurturing too.
Yeah, know? That's what I mean.
You know, also it's interesting when we're trying to be calm and speak softly and make sure he's just content, and like that's how our vibe is. And also, I have like a very intentional way to like I speak to him, even as like a 2-week-old and stuff. Yeah. And you can just tell some people that come in there like barbarians, just hey baby, like talking to him like I'm like, okay, babies don't like that. You know what I mean?
We're also trying to keep his heart rate down.
Yeah, I'm like, they're like trying to like look at his chest and stuff, and they're unswaddling him super quick. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm sure he loves that. Like that's gonna get an accurate read. You know what I mean? Some of those young doctors.
Yeah, but again, I think we should reiterate that we're very grateful for all the people that took care of him.
Amazing. But like a lot of the time when I'm just sitting there observing, I'm just like, that's not how I would do it. Like you haven't read the same baby books that I did, because they don't talk to babies like that. You know what I mean though? You remember some of them.
Yes, I do.
The baby talk ones, some of them would like really talk to them like, but I'm like, nobody says words like that. Like I get how you're trying to, I know. But I'm just like, what are you doing? I don't know. It was fine. I didn't obviously say anything or whatever. I just, there were some that I was like, yeah, we're on the same wavelength.
I didn't care if they wanted to do baby talk as long as they just got him healthy. I'm like, just fix him, please.
Yeah. But overall, life-changing experience for me, I'd imagine for you.
Yes.
This is the first podcast we've got a little teary-eyed on, I think. Mm-hmm. Maybe.
Other than when we introduce Harlow.
Right. But we have a new favorite now, Harlow. And I think I was overwhelmed too. Again, like just the overwhelming support of loved ones and people that are praying and thinking of us and sending good vibes. And
because initially we didn't really want to say anything. Not that we didn't appreciate the prayers and stuff. I don't know. We're just kind of private people, and when it comes to stuff like that, I'm going to start crying again, so I'm not going to go there. But somebody sent me a text, Leah did, that her daughter at school, just on her own, during her yoga class, her teacher said something like, I want you guys to put good vibes out there for somebody. And Elise told Leah that she did that for Zion. And I felt like after I heard that, I was like, I don't know, I just could see the good in like telling people just to have people praying for Zion.
And you told me that. I got really sad. I blocked Leah's number. I'm like, you ain't sending me any text because that is too emotional. I'm like, if you don't, I'm shutting you down for the next week.
It was just so cool because like Elise is what, I think 7 or 8, and just like a child to like have that type of awareness and to do something like that is just like, it's so pure and like genuine.
So Chris and Leah, you did something right. I mean,
so that was just cool.
Yeah, that was really special.
But yes, we very much appreciated all of the prayers, and we know that
or just
there's
the
a lot
text
of
message,
power
even
in
if you're
that.
not a praying person too.
Yes.
Like it means a lot for you just to take the time to send us a text or
to know that you're thinking
a
about
post
us.
And I mean, obviously we would like to I'd hug everybody and, you know.
But not right now because we're trying to keep our kids healthy.
Yeah. But
anyway, if you suffered through our ugly crying.
Could be worse. Now after like having babies, certain songs hit differently. Now that you have a child that was very sick, different songs hit differently. And I'm always like, you know, I don't know, we've become more vulnerable in other ways, but that's okay. And I feel like I appreciate things more. And
for sure.
This was much longer than we anticipated, but I think it was all worth noting. And we feel very fortunate and blessed. And
thankfully, we were able to end that little nightmare we went through. And we're very aware that some people aren't able to end or wake up from a terrible nightmare. So we know that this isn't the worst thing that people could go through.
Right.
But
this is relatively trivial. And, but we appreciate you guys being here. And we will see you on the next one.
Yeah. We'll try not to ugly cry.
If that wasn't an underwhelming podcast, I don't know what is. Either way, we appreciate you guys tuning in. If you found some value in what we had to say, please give us a thumbs up, a comment, and subscribe. Again, thank you very much for being here, and we will see you on the next one.